Every time I put on this helmet, I feel like it gets 10% smaller. Hi, my name is Tyler Russo of Billion Dollar Clown Farm. Welcome to Daredevil Painting. I got a helix piercing and it makes this hurt even more than it normally does. But I told myself I'd get good use out of this prop this year. I like being branded as low stakes Evel Knievel. These Drukhari were to be painted for a team tournament this weekend. My friend Charlotte played them and it's a joint army. We're splitting, so there'll probably be more in the future. At the team tournament, there's a lot of screaming, as occurs when you have 100 adult men in the same room, all competing with each other to communicate their various Warhammer related grievances as loud as possible. These were mostly painted within like 24 hours. Certainly more work that was done after that, but the bulk of it was completed in 24 hours, so we're gonna call this a successful 24-hour speed painting challenge. And yeah, I think I might start cranking out a bunch of these. Adepticon is coming up real soon, and there's a couple more big projects I want to get done before then, so we'll see if that actually happens or not. But I'm trying to hold my future self accountable. You can too.
Dark Eldar are actually one of the first armies I ever played, and I've been looking for an excuse to paint them again for a while. Charlotte did all of the priming and assembly on these. They arrived ready for me to paint, which is my favorite way to receive models. I actually really hate building, which is why I got into kit bashing partially to begin with. I just building stock models is never fun for me. I was sort of torn between these two for a direction to go in, so I ended up mixing a tiny bit of the Turbo Dark Black Ice with the Pro Acryl Dark Silver, and then that mix was combined with Pro Acryl Bronze, which is that's a great thing for speed painting, is combining paints and really weird ratios that you'll never be able to replicate again. I tried to leave a little bit of a gradient of black towards the feet and the gun tap and parts of the body, but I mostly just covered the whole thing in this mixture. The first few I picked up and painted individually, but then I realized you can kind of just blast the whole army from far away and it looks about the same. And then I went back and touched some of the ones up that needed more paint on an as-needed basis. For any areas that I still wanted black, I took some contrast Black Templar and rebase coated them, as well as trying to make the gradient towards the feet and different parts of the body a little more noticeable. I still thinned the Black Templar a little bit. Sometimes putting straight contrast through an airbrush I feel is a little too gunky. If you don't own contrast or speed paint, I don't really think you need to use the contrast paint here. I'm just used to doing it, so I did. I think if you thin down normal black paint, it would do about the same job. I dry brushed most of the model with an extremely thin coat of Pro Acryl Silver. I tried to be extremely light here because A, I wanted the effect to be subtle, and B, I kept breaking the models constantly. My thick orc dry brushing hands just have too much muscle memory for applying pressure. Because we're going really light, it's okay to get this on the black too. I actually think it adds a lot to it. It makes the black parts feel not just matte black and makes them pop. And for any areas you don't want to be shiny, just put some matte varnishing at the end and it'll dull down the metallic flakes. As visually indicated by the previous shot in which I was talking over the footage that was supposed to go with it. I washed most of the metal with Sepithim Sepia and some white rust wash. Again, in a mixture that'll be sort of hard for me to recreate in the future, but whatever. It looked good this time. I'll figure it out. I don't apply this everywhere, basically just where joints intersect, or any areas that feel too big and need to be broken up to feel smaller. I feel being subtle with washes generally produces better results. I base coated all the skin with pure white. This is Pro Acryl Bold Titanium White through an airbrush. Somebody told me that this is not good for you, but I chose to ignore that information. If you want to look into it, be my guest, but I'm not sure how true that is. And this video is going to age really great when I die from titanium white related cancer. As you can see here, it's hard to get the white completely without getting a little bit of overspill, and areas like your shirt I'm planning on just going back over with black by hand later. For me, it feels easier to go over the white with black by hand rather than the black with white by hand. I repeated the same process on all their helmets because I didn't want the models to feel solid bronze, and having a big white spot, most of the body brown, and then some black details will make it feel more real and cohesive. I also painted the blades white because I'm going to put fluorescent red on them later. In general, if you want to use fluorescent colors, base coating white, then applying them will look a lot better because they'll be super bright. Rewatching this footage is making me realize how dependent on Pro Acryl paints have become. It's definitely the paints I use the most now. I mixed the Pro Acryl fluorescent red with a little bit of Dollar Rowney ink, which is another super bright red, but it's really thin. So I ended up doing a bunch of different coats. And even though I like the color of the red ink more, the Pro Acryl coverage is so good. So by the end, the mixture was mostly Pro Acryl. I think it took around 3 or 4 coats to get it to this brightness. And I didn't get to do this for every model yet because it's, the speed painting, but for the ones you want to have be special and stand out, highlighting the edge of the blade with another layer of white with more red and a tiny bit of orange mixed in will make it pop even more. The base bases were airbrushed with like a pretty cool gray tone. And I applied that same tone to the wings and the hair and any like black areas that I wanted to have highlights. And this process was repeated with the same color with even more white mixed in after. Also did a second coat of very thin black, just on anything that needed to be touched up a little bit. I washed the edges of the bases with that same like brown orange mix. You can literally do like 90% of this paint job with an airbrush. And then I painted the base rims black with an airbrush as well. I quickly went over the like glowing red areas with a little bit of orange mixed with red towards the end. The only thing that I felt was like absolutely necessary to do by hand was obviously like a lot of them have this like corpse paint look, which I do on a lot of armies. And that's done just by like very patiently and carefully using black paint with a very well maintained and preferably new brush. For models that are super dark, a quick way to add highlights is to take an airbrush and do like a specular pass of gray and then white. You can see it on her hair here towards the top. And the whole army was given a thin coat of satin varnish a couple times actually. I think it's like 2 or 3 thin coats of satin varnish. Just because I play with models so often, I know these are going to be like touched a lot. I'd much rather like over varnish models and have them be super well protected, but maybe dull the color a tiny bit, than under varnish and have them chip over time. I also use a Winsor Newton fluorescent varnish for all the fluorescent parts. Fluorescent paints tend to dull over time unless you varnish them pretty well. And this I also just apply through an airbrush onto fluorescent parts of the model specifically. Yeah, that's it though. Thanks for watching. I'm going to try and make more of these. I have a lot more time on my hands right now because I was laid off recently, which is like fine. But yeah, if you feel like subscribing to me on Patreon, I'd really appreciate it. And if you are not fiscally able to do so, no worries. This is all just going to be free forever anyways. Also, see you at Adepticon if you're going there. Bye.